There are millions of men out there who are so afraid to assert themselves because they're afraid of rejection, they're afraid of failure, they're afraid of looking foolish. And the ironic and cruel thing about it is everybody already thinks you're a failure when you're acting like a loser. But when you're acting passive as a man, everybody already thinks you're a loser. They want somebody who has courage and balls and audacity, but can also be humble. Kipp, what's up, man? So good to see you. We were talking before we hit record. You've been doing this for, 2018. So 7-year anniversary next month, is it? Is that what you said?
Coming this April. Yeah, coming this April. This April. The first episode.
So a couple of months from now. And it's funny, you said something, and I wanted to wait to respond till we hit record about going back and listening to your first episode and how cringy it was. I leave my stuff up. Even the first episodes, the first 2 YouTube videos, for that reason. It is very cringy. I do not enjoy going back to listen to it. I do not enjoy when people reference old episodes, early episodes. But I do like the fact that over the course of doing this for you for 7 years, for me for 10 years, that you get better, you improve, and sometimes it just takes a little bit to find your footing. Most people, I think, assume, especially if they just stumble onto this podcast or anything that they enjoy, that person is just gifted by the hand of God with whatever they're doing. And while I will admit there are some certain skill sets or capabilities that certain people possess in order to be successful in certain endeavors, it's really just hard work. It's just effort. It's just reps. It's just consistency, it's feedback, it's analyzing yourself, critiquing yourself, and then just trying to get better every single day. So what I would suggest is never discount any level of success a person has had, whether it's in the podcasting space or you see a fit guy at the gym or you see a guy who's knocking it out of the park with his marriage or a great relationship with his kids. That's work. It took work to get to that point.
Yeah. Well, and what's the psychology of why we do that? So we can downplay where we're at and go, oh, well, I'm just not as talented as Ryan. But if I get present to the idea that you got to where you are because of reps, then that means that I'm confronted with the idea that I have no excuses, and it's really about, am I willing to put in the time?
Yeah, I don't know that people do that consciously. Do you think they do? I don't think they do it consciously.
No, I think it's subconscious.
I think it's just subconscious. Yeah. They just, and you'll catch yourself in moments of, and I try to anyways, when I see a guy, and I still do it today, when I see a guy and I attribute his success to either luck or an immutable characteristic. Yeah. If I do one of those two things, I probably don't get it 100%, but I try very quickly to say, stop. Even if it's true, and I don't think it is, but even if it were, nope, we're not going down that road. That is not a path I'm willing to explore because it does nothing for me. Because I'm not whatever fill in the blank reason that person is successful. It's just not helpful. So I don't even go down that road.
Yeah, totally. So give me the rundown. Winter Strong over the weekend. How did it go?
It was good, man. Went out to Sorensen Outdoors, Winter Strong. This was their 7th one. I've been to 5 of them. I missed the first one. I missed last year. But I'm telling you what, this is actually what I was going to do for my headline, is talk a little bit about this and not get into the specifics of Winter Strong itself. But when I was going through everything I'd been going through over the past couple of years, I really took a hiatus on traveling around, going to different events, being in different, places and communities and organizations, just because I was so focused on what was going on with me personally. And I missed a lot of that. And it's not always convenient, right? You had to fly and get out to South Carolina from Utah, and I had to take away 4 or 5 of my days of things that I could be doing here. So it's not always convenient, but man, if you weren't finding ways to be around other men that motivate you, that inspire you, to be part of a community that you're interested in, with Sorensen specifically, it's strength training and hunting, which are 2 of my favorite things. So if I'm not taking the time to invest my time, invest money, invest in other people to go out and do these things, I really feel like I'm wasting life. I could make every excuse, and I have every excuse not to go. I'm busy. I've got this and that. I've got the kids. I want to spend time with my girlfriend. I mean, there's so much that I could come up with. And all of those stories ran through my head. And yet I decided to go, and I'm so grateful I did, because from the minute I got there, you see old friends you haven't seen for a year, and you connect with people who you've never met before, or you go deeper into a conversation with somebody that maybe you've been friends with for years, and they have their own personal struggles that you had no idea of what they were going through. And I actually had that happen. I kind of feel like a bit of a shithead friend, but it was good to connect on some of those things. So yeah, I mean, that's just the power of going to do events, and that leads nicely into the event that we're running. If you are looking for an event to do and be part of, then come out and join us in May. We've got an incredible lineup. We're going to be banding together. We're going to be working together. We're going to be learning from each other. We're going to be pushing on each other physically and mentally and emotionally. And you're going to walk away not only as a better man, a more capable man, somebody who knows what you want to do the rest of 2025, but you're going to have, I'm not going to say 100, but you're going to make 2 or 3 connections that could potentially become lifelong friends. And I only say that because that is exactly what happens to me every single time I go to an event. And I might not talk to that person for another 6 months or another year, but there are people who have become lifelong friends because I invested a few $100, I took a weekend, and I did something outside of my comfort zone to put myself in proximity to people that I want to be like and be inspired and motivated by. So that's the Men's Forge. Check it out at themensforge.com.
Awesome. My headline over the weekend, I watched the Super Bowl yesterday. It was great. It was a good game. I was kind of hoping the Eagles would win. But my takeaway from the game was the head coach of the Eagles during the interview post-game. And he said something to the extent of that greatness you can't have greatness, individual greatness, without the greatness of others from a team perspective. And that just resonated with me. I literally grabbed my phone and I wrote that down. I'm like, how critical it is that who we surround ourselves, and it works in perfectly with your headline, who we surround ourselves with matters. And the greatness that is made possible in each of us is often influenced by who we surround ourselves with and the greatness of people that we interact with, that we choose to band with. And it matters.
Always.
Right?
Not just often. Always influences.
Yeah. And so, and that was just kind of my takeaway over the weekend. It's like, man, it matters. It absolutely matters who you're around. And be around great people.
Kipp, I think everybody knows that, right? We've all heard that. A bunch of people probably have heard that ad nauseum. And I'm not discounting the importance or relevance of it. The question is, what do you do? Like that's really what we need to explain, because there are men who are listening to this right now who are surrounded by losers and assholes.
Yeah.
And maybe they're a loser and an asshole. They probably are if they're surrounded by losers and assholes. So the question is not should we all know that. The question is, how do we? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I think the first part of the step is the awareness and taking inventory. Are you around people that uplift you, that are on a solid path that you want to be on? And I don't know if we all do that. And I think we downplay it a little bit, or we add meaning like, well, they're my friends from a long time ago. And we're not suggesting that you have to be cold and hate them and not love them and see them for wherever they are and whatever talents and gifts that they actually have. But I think the inventory of it is the first step. You have to really ask yourself, right? Am I surrounding myself with the right people? And if you're not, and I'll just grab something from your playbook that you always talk about, is go where those people are. Go to these events. Go to the gym where people are getting after it. Go to areas that people are centered. I mean, how many times have we had guys ask about dating good women, and our first response is, well, stop going to the bar. And if you're looking for a religious girl, guess where you got to go? To church, right? And if you're not doing that, then that's problem number one. And so maybe even just evaluating, where are you? What path are you on, regardless of the crowd that you're putting around? And you're never going to be around the right people unless you get on that same path.
Yeah. No, I think that's solid. I would even take it a step further than just an inventory, because sometimes when we hear inventory, you're like, oh, yeah, my friends aren't the best, and that's my inventory. It's like, no, that's not what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, let's just take the 10 closest people to you. You know, you've got your wife, hopefully, your kids, maybe some family, and then you've probably got 2 or 3 closer friends. Maybe they're work acquaintances or family members, or friends, like you said, from high school. When we say inventory, here's what I mean. Who do I need to carve out of my life? Or at least put in a box? Because there are people who you need to package up in a little box, and that's where they belong. And it's not anything about their worth as human beings, and you don't need to spit on them and beat them up and all that kind of stuff like you're talking about. Of course, that's not what we're saying. But you shouldn't be spending time with those people. Now, if your family members want to come over and you guys have a Super Bowl party for the family and all that kind of stuff, and that's planned, that's the box. We can contain them in that box. That's fine. But I'm not going to invite you to hang out with me on the weekend. I'm not going to invite you on the conferences and the events that I attend, because I don't want you and your attitude and your negativity spilling over into this aspect of my life. So I will put up with you at family events. I will put up with you at work because I'm required to, and I want the work environment to be a healthy environment. But that's the box in which you belong, and you don't get to leave that box in my world. And I think a lot of guys have a hard time doing that out of a sense of loyalty in some cases, out of a sense of being nice in some cases, and then just out of a sense of ignorance. They don't even know. They're not even aware of how damaging and toxic this person is in their lives. So I would really, when you do this inventory, spend some time thinking about the 2 to 3 people who you need to package up and allow to operate inside of that little capacity in your life and no more. And then to your point after that is, okay, where do I go to meet strong, fit individuals? You go to Spartan races, you go to the gym, you go train jujitsu. And when you're there, don't just be the loser on the wall that hangs out and doesn't engage. Like, get your ass in the game. You know, I talk with a lot of guys who are like, oh, I'll go to the gym. Right, but do you talk to anybody? Do you make any effort to connect with another human being? Well, no, I don't know. It's not enough just to go to the thing. You have to put yourself in the game. You know, we're on the heels of the Super Bowl, and I didn't personally watch the Super Bowl, but there's a lot of guys that sit that sideline and they're going to get a championship ring who frankly didn't do much. Get yourself in the game. And if you're not, then don't say you're doing it, because half-ass might as well be, maybe stealing this a little bit from Ron Swanson. You need a whole ass it.
Yeah.
Not half-ass 2 things. Whole ass 1 thing. Meaning go all the way in and fully show up and be present. And when you go to events or you go to the gym, ask questions, meet people, introduce yourself. I promise you, nobody's going to think you're weird. Nobody's going to think less of you. And you're going to make the connections that you deserve and you want to have in your life.
Absolutely. All right, we got questions from the Foundry, from the Iron Council. To learn more about the Iron Council, you can go to orderofman.com/Iron Council. Sean Combs.
Hey, actually, Kip, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Before we get to that, can I just answer a question here? This one came over on Instagram, and he messaged me, I don't know how long ago, and I told him we'd answer it, and I didn't, and then he messaged me back, and I didn't answer it. And over the weekend, he's like, how do I get this question answered? So I flagged it, so I wanted to get this answered for him.
All right, let's
This
do
is
it.
from Jedediah Williams. He says, did you stop asking what it means to be a man to your guests because you created your motto, protect, provide, preside? He's been listening to the podcast for 5 or 6 years and noticed I haven't asked that question. And I wanted to just address that real quick. The reason I don't ask that question is because I ask a bunch of other questions that actually answer that question in a more organic, thoughtful, considerate way to my guests. I consider myself a conversationalist. So I don't ever go into a conversation with you, Kip, or friends with predetermined questions I'm going to ask you. There might be some things I want to talk with you about, and I'm thoughtful and aware of what I might want to talk about and discuss in our conversation, but I don't feel like asking the same guest one question over and over again, or what I used to do, ask all my guests the exact same question, honors you as a listener And it certainly doesn't honor the guest and their expertise and knowledge. So I did do away with that question years and years ago because I want the answers to that question to be infused throughout the conversation.
Yeah.
And by the way, I think it's really important. Here's a lesson you can take away from this. As a conversationalist, and we all should be working on being better conversationalists, allow the person to just go, to explore. And if you have a hard time asking questions or even creating small talk, which I used to scoff at, but I actually now think it's important, just go another level deeper. So, for example, and this ties into what I was saying earlier about events. If Kipp, you and I are at the same event and we happen to be sitting next to each other on the plane over, which actually happened as I was going to Sorenex, I might ask. There's an acronym I use. It's FROG is the acronym I use. So friends and family, recreation, occupation, and goals. So let's just take occupation. So Kipp, what do you do for work? And then you answer it. A lot of people get stuck. They're like, what do I do now? Just go one level deeper. Oh, that's interesting. How did you get into that line of work? And then if you get stuck after that, you might say, move into another thing. Well, that's really cool that you got into that line of work. Do you have goals that you're working? Like what are some of your goals in the occupation? Is it income based? Is it client based? Are you trying to create new initiatives? Just get really, really good at asking questions. So that's why I do that. I wanted to answer that question for Jedediah, but I also wanted to give you guys a little feedback as it comes to talking with people. It's not hard. Just focus on them and be curious. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. All right. So Sean Combs' question, overcoming fears of failure, and asking for things you want relationally and at work. I don't have the greatest relationship with my wife at the time. I'm afraid to move either way. Do I go 100% into the relationship that is in my mind, making me miserable, or do I walk away? The same thing at work. I have no clear path of a future at this company. The owner is looking to get out in a couple years, but has not put in a succession plan. He doesn't seem interested in listening to the guys he has working with him. Do I push to be heard, or I try to get a future plan in place, or do I walk away from the company and all the work that I've put into this company? Any advice would be great.
Yeah, Sean, you're operating in this land of false dichotomies. Do I go all in, or do I walk away? Do I create this other plan and walk away from the business, or do I go all in on the business without a plan? Who says those are the only two options available? And by the way, if those were the only two options available, the answer would be 100% all the way in. If those were the only two options available. Because I'd be willing to bet that even though you're not happy in your relationship, it's probably in part, I'm not going to say 100%, but in part to your inability to invest 100% in the relationship. Maybe the reason, and I don't know this, but I want you to chew on this a little bit. Maybe the reason your boss isn't presenting a succession plan to you is because he's not real confident in handing his business to you. Now that might be insulting, and you might think I'm being insulting, and I can certainly see how it would come across that way, but I'm only telling you that because nobody else is probably willing to tell you that. You're the common denominator in your relational and professional problems. Who else is it? Your wife doesn't have anything to do with your business and your boss doesn't have anything to do with your wife. So who is the only person that is constant in those two scenarios? It's you, Sean. That's not to say your wife doesn't have things to work on or your boss doesn't have things to work on. They certainly do, but you can't do anything about that. So what I would suggest to you is go 100% into your relationship. And you don't need a time. I'm not telling you do it for 6 months. No, we're not. We can talk about that down the road. But for now, I just want you to go 100% into your relationship. We can talk about what that might look like. And I want you to go 100% into the business. The ironic thing about going 100% into something is it actually creates a lot of opportunities over here. So if you go 100% into your business, you're going to start noticing opportunities, career and professional opportunities that weren't present before, because people are going to start to see that you're the kind of person they would like to have on their team. So going all in covers both of those bases. Also, going all in on yourself, diet, nutrition, strength, sleep, spirituality, learning, knowledge, banding with friends, developing wholesome and good recreational hobbies and activities. All of that stuff will improve every aspect of your life. I'll address one more thing. I want to hear what you have to say, Kipp, on this, but I will address one other thing. With your marriage, you guys took vows. You said that you will be with her forever. That's what you said, I assume. And because you said that, then you have a moral responsibility to honor that. And I'm not saying it will work out indefinitely. My marriage didn't work out, but you have a moral obligation because you said you would to go all in. And regarding asking for what you want, what's the worst that can happen if you ask for what you want? Your marriage falls apart? Sounds like it already is. So all in means you start asking for what you want in a respectful, considerate, compassionate way. Hey, hon, I'm not happy. I haven't been happy for a long time. And by the way, I don't actually think you're happy either, are you? And let her express herself. But I also made a commitment to you, and I also love you. I know that you probably love her, even though you're considering maybe having some of these conversations, but you do love her, I'm sure. Otherwise, you would have ended it a long time ago. And you tell her, hey, I want to work on these things. I want to be more communicative with each other. I want to be more physically intimate. I want to feel happy to walk in the door. I want you to be happy that I walk in the door. And you start asking for what that might look like. And I promise she's been thinking about it too. So I think all in for you means asking for what you want. And she can ultimately say, well, I'm not willing to do that. Okay. She has a choice too. But I don't think she'll say that. I would be surprised if she didn't say, oh my God, finally, you're acting like a man. Finally, you're being assertive. Finally, you're being the man that I married and wanted to commit to. Finally. And then you guys can start working through your problems.
I just want to point out that when I talk about a victim mindset, there are red flags to know if you have a victim mindset. And the first one is waiting and hoping. Of course you're disempowered. Why? Because according to you and your statement here, your relationship is in the hands of who? You? No, it's in the hands of my wife. Okay, got it. Job sucks. Why? Who did you give that power over to? Oh, my boss. Yeah, so you're just sitting back waiting to be acted upon. Any human with that mindset will feel highly disempowered. And so move to taking action, deal in reality. Awesome. Boss doesn't have a plan. He doesn't seem interested in listening to people. Got it. Okay, so what am I going to do about it? Move to action. Like literally do something about it. And by the way, like Ryan said, there's no guarantees because it involves people, right? It involves your spouse, it involves your boss. But are you doing everything within your realm of control? And if you're not 100%, then the answer is no, you're not. Which also means you're not learning from these two circumstances. You have two great, amazing opportunities placed before you to learn and grow as a man. And it is in the space of dealing with both of these hardships. That's how you learn and grow. And if you moved on to just another relationship, if you just moved on to another job, you just wasted this hardship and you didn't learn from them. So the probable future is what? Ride the fence of another relationship, ride the fence, hoping that a boss will see my value. Like, learn from these circumstances. Otherwise, they're wasted.
You know what's so crazy about this, Kipp, is I know there are millions of men out there who are so afraid to assert themselves because they're afraid of rejection, they're afraid of failure, they're afraid of looking foolish. And the ironic and cruel thing about it is everybody already thinks you're a failure when you're acting like a loser. And I'm not saying Sean is, by the way.
Yeah.
But when you're acting passive as a man, everybody already thinks you're a loser. Everybody already walks all over you. Everybody already thinks you're a failure. If you can learn to assert yourself, I'll give you an example, and I don't need to get into the specifics necessarily, but my girlfriend and I had a disagreement on a comment that I had made on the podcast a couple of weeks ago regarding women in law enforcement. And she explained her position, and I explained mine, and she did not like my position, but it's my position. And what do you want me to do? Like say, oh, you're right? I don't believe you're like, it's my opinion. This is what I believe. I've thought about it. I'm willing to explore and entertain other ideas. But for now, this is where I stand based on what I've seen. And we weren't mad at each other. We were just kind of bantering back and forth. And she said one thing at the end, and I think this is what a lot of guys need to understand. She said, I do appreciate, though, your willingness to say it, even though it's really, really unpopular with a lot of people.
Yeah. At least you're not flipping.
What people, right. That's what people want from you. They want somebody who has courage and balls and audacity, but can also be humble and willing to explore other options and avenues and ideas. But at the end of the day, your wife isn't interested in you being a passive little child. She's interested in you saying, hey, I'm not happy. So, because she already knows that. Like, you're not hiding anything. She already knows. She's just wondering when you're going to be man enough to bring it up.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, this is good, Sean. Like, I have to say this, like this might be coming across really negative. Hopefully this like fires you up and doesn't, you don't see this as an attack. But this is, and thanks for asking this question too.
For sure.
Because this is good. This is absolutely good. And it goes back to what you said with your headline, Ryan. A lot of people see success and they go, oh, well, they're lucky or whatever. Guess what, Sean? Most people in a great relationship, they've dealt with this. Most people with a great boss and success have dealt with this. I've dealt with this, both of these. And you think that you don't have to deal with it to have a great relationship and a great career? Ha! You're dreaming, man. You got to figure out both of these things if you want success in those two areas. Because all of us had to. So get in line. These are the reps. These are the reps.
And for guys who, and Sean, by the way, this is not only good, hopefully for you, but it's good for everybody else who's in the same situation. Trust me, there are millions of men, and I talk to a lot of them every week. And they're hearing this, and they're putting themselves hopefully in your shoes and understanding what my answer to them might be. But it's empowering when you finally say what's on your mind. But it is risky. That's why it's scary, because there's risk. You risk alienating the relationship. The relationship's already alienated, bud. Like it is. Like, so let's go.
Yeah.
You got this.
Love it, man. All right. Chris Henningsen, when talking to friends and men you think would benefit from the Iron Council, how would you go about telling them about it? Trying to convince them to check it out? I've struggled with feeling like I'm being too vague, or even though I feel like I'm fairly active in the Iron Council. It's just sometimes it feels hard to explain.
Yeah, well, I think there was one word that I might get hung up on a little bit that I think maybe you are too. You use the word convince.
Yeah.
That was the word I focused in on. You don't need to convince anybody. I didn't convince you to join. Yeah. And the more somebody needs to be convinced to join us, the less of a fit the Iron Council is going to be for us. And this just doesn't go for the Iron Council, but I learned this in sales when I was doing financial planning. If you're a financial advisor, listen to this, guys. If you're a financial advisor, I was going to say if you're struggling, I don't care if you're struggling or not, go buy the book, The Selling Chronicles. The Selling Chronicles. It is an incredible book. It's a fictional story that weaves in lessons into the fictional story, but that transformed my financial planning practice and the way that I approached people. You don't need to convince them. You don't need to sell them. You don't need to tell them all the benefits. All you need to do is ask questions. That's it.
Yeah.
So, Kipp, if you're my friend, and I'd love to have you in the Iron Council, you might say this, and this is how it gets brought up a lot. Hey, man, like, I've noticed you've lost a bunch of weight. Like, what are you doing? That's a good moment to bring something up. Oh, well, I'm working out and eating right. But really, for me, it's the accountability piece. Like, the eating right, the working out, we all know to do that. It's the accountability stuff. Or do you have any sort of accountability in your life? And they might say, oh, yeah, I work on this group. Say, that's awesome. Like, tell me about it. And that's it. Like, it's fine. Or they might say, no, I don't have any, but I've been looking for something. Oh, really? Yeah, like I found this awesome group I belong to, and I work with 10 other guys, and we talk every week and every day, and we joke and laugh, but we also hold each other to account, and it's been really good. Actually, you should check it out. You might actually really enjoy it. And you might say, no, I'm not really interested in that. I say, no problem. That's cool. I just thought I'd bring it up. If you ever have any questions, let me know. That's it. And then he's going to keep seeing your progress, and he's going to see you run that marathon or win the Spartan race or whatever it is. And he's going to be like, dude, that thing must really be working for him. Just let your actions speak for you. But if on the other hand, he says, oh yeah, I am kind of interested. Say, well, why don't you they have an open enrollment next month. Why don't you just come to the preview call? I'll join you on the preview call. You and I we'll do it together. You can come over. We'll jump on the preview call, and then we'll have dinner or something after, or something like that. It's easy. Just lower the expectations. It's not a big deal. We don't need your friends here. We want your friends here. And the more you try to push and convince and sell, the more, what happens when something chases you? You run away. Like I do. If something scary runs away that I'm like, I don't know what that thing is, it's scary, I run away. Right? Like my son and I went hunting in Africa last year. If a leopard jumped out of a tree, I'm running. Like I'm not sticking around. But that's my advice. Just be casual, be comfortable, be a friend. He's going to see your results. Let that speak for itself. And then just casually invite and do it together. Hey, we're open. Come join that preview call. Or maybe you talked with a guy last month and didn't really go anywhere. Maybe you just send him a text and say, hey, the guys are having a meeting tonight. It's an open preview call. It's tonight at 6. Why don't you join it with me? That's an easy way to do it, I found.
Yeah, and it just reiterates the power of choice, right?
Sovereignty.
You want people here for choice out of agency and freedom, not through being convinced and all that yicky, because then they're like, well, I really didn't want to, but Ryan kind of pressured me into it. And then they don't even have the right mindset to be there. Like just present opportunity, address questions, let them choose. There's huge power in that.
By the way, you should also, just to make this a little bit broader of a question, we should all be doing this if we're in sales.
Totally.
If you're hard pushing on sales, you know what that reeks of? Desperation. Yeah. If I go to the car lot and I'm in the market for a new truck and the guy comes out and he just bludgeons me with all the facts and data and his obnoxious, clever, witty, stupid phrases, I'm like, this guy, he needs to sell this truck. This is probably the only truck he's going to sell this month. Yeah. That's what that guy reeks of to me.
Totally.
If on the other hand, he comes out and he's like, hey man, are you in the market for something? And I say, yeah, I'm looking for a truck. And he's like, cool. Like, do you own a truck now? Like, is this your first truck? Give me a little bit of details. I can point you in the right direction. And you're like, yeah, I'm just looking to upgrade my GMC. Cool. Well, here's what we have. Here's what's available. Do you have any questions? Do you want to take one for a ride? Well, yeah. What I'm saying is just loosen up a little bit. It's fine. Everybody knows what they want. They can make their decisions. And if they don't, just say, if you came to the car lot and I did it this way, Kipp, and I'm like, hey, that's cool. Like you're not in the market. Do you mind if I grab your number or your email address? And if something flags that might fit in what you're looking for, I can shoot you a text or an email. Would you be cool with that? You go, yeah, sure. I get your text. A month later, I'm like, hey, I don't know if you ended up buying anything or not, but we just had this 2025 four-door GMC Duramax come in white, and it kind of matches everything you said you wanted. I'm not sure if you're interested, but it's here if you're interested. If you did that 200 times a month, you're going to knock it out of the park.
Well,
it's
and
easy.
And that's the sales rep that when a buddy says, hey, man, I'm looking for a truck, I'm like, you know what? Reach out to this guy. He's super cool to work with, right? Some guys, the pushy sales rep may get the sell, but guess what? He's not getting any referrals. The referral. Right?
Yeah, good point.
Because I have buyer's remorse the whole time. I'm like, damn, I regret this already. I shouldn't have purchased this. If anything, I might even speak ill of that company and that rep. So even if the pushing gets the sell, they're definitely not getting referrals. Not with that strategy.
Yeah. There's also follow-up too. I love this sales stuff, but there's follow-up too. So if you do buy the truck, a month later, I'm going to reach out and be like, hey man, like, how's the truck treating you? Have you taken it off road? Have you guys done any trips? And you're like, oh, actually, we're doing a little bit of a road trip to, the Northeast, and we're taking the truck because we're going to go, skiing up there or whatever. And we're doing that next month. Guess what's going on my calendar? If you're doing that March 15th, on March 20th, I'm texting you and I'm saying, hey man, how's the trip? How's the truck? You guys, what are you doing? Are you loving it? Are you enjoying it? It's a game. It's a fun game if you do it this way, and it just creates longevity. This is how I built my financial planning practice to where it was, which springboarded me into what we're doing here. Play the long game in sales for sure.
Yeah. All right. Joe Gunter, in thinking about putting in the best work and getting the most out of battle team experience, I had this thought and question the other day. When I think of some of the best teams that I've been part of, they are teams that I shared some kind of battle. Teams where we stood shoulder to shoulder, physically fought the odds together. Through those battles, we forged bonds and trust, loyalty, and brotherhood. We don't have that on these teams in a way that physical battles forge men. The question would be, how do we create that dynamic?
Yeah, I mean, that's proven to be true. When men work together towards a common purpose or against a common enemy, they forge deeper bonds. This is why men who are in horrific situations, whether it's natural disasters and emergencies, active shooter situations, military combat, even sports, build and forge lifelong friendships through the struggle of those circumstances. You can actually do that. You don't. It's not that you can't do that with a battle team. You guys can go decide to do a Spartan race together. You guys can decide that, hey, maybe one of your guys is really struggling. Maybe he's going through a divorce right now. All of you can decide, hey, we're going to spend a couple $100 in 48 hours and we're all going to go to him. You can do that. And what if you did? Like, what if you showed up for one of your guys, y'all spent a couple $100, y'all took a Saturday and a Sunday, and you just showed up. You're like, hey, man, we're here. Like, maybe we're here to help you move. Maybe we're just going to go hit the gym together or go, hike the mountain or go camping or whatever, but we're all going to show up. You could do that. What would be keeping you from doing that? Some people might say, well, money. Well, okay, then the other guy who can afford $400 can cover the guy who can't pay any. Like, help each other out. This is a team.
Yeah.
And then, of course, outside of that work, inside of the brotherhood that you're doing on a regular basis, what I would say to you is very similar to what we shared with Sean. We were I wouldn't say we were hard on Sean, but we were pretty forthright with Sean earlier. It was Sean, right? Our first question?
Yeah.
We were pretty forthright. And that's how men communicate. I could have danced around the answer and you could have given a softball answer and you could have, rubbed his tummy and made him feel better about his life choices, but that's not what we did. We were forthright with him because we respect him as a man. If I didn't treat him that way, it's actually an insult. It's insulting. Essentially what I'm saying is you can't handle the truth of what I need to share with you, so I'm going to dumb it down or soften it up so you, Mr. Incapable Sean, can deal with it more effectively. Well, I don't believe that. I think Sean's fully capable of hearing hard things and doing difficult things. And if there's one thing that I see sometimes in the Iron Council that I don't actually like, it's men taking it too easy on each other. Yeah. The Eagles, they won the Super Bowl. Again, I didn't watch it, but I watched some highlights this morning. Do you think those guys are soft on each other when their right guard misses a block? Fuck no. No way. You missed that block. You failed your assignment. You got the guy sacked. You forced the interception. Do better or you're out. And that's how men communicate with each other. So I would like to see, again, not harshness. I would like to see more truth, more honesty, more confrontation. When a guy shows up and he didn't do his battle plan, you don't say, oh, it's okay. I know you were busy. No, it's not okay. You said you wanted to do it, and you also said you would do it as part of this team, and you're not doing it. So tell me why. And more importantly than that, tell me how it's going to change. If all of you guys build a culture on your team around that concept, I promise, not only you're going to see more results, but you're going to forge deeper bonds, because that's how men communicate. Women do it differently. This is how men do it.
And part of this, Jeremy, comes down to, not Jeremy, I'm sorry. I jumped ahead on my questions here. Part of this, Joe, is like what you're willing to enlist people in, what you're about, right? If you're being superficial on the battle team, like, oh yeah, I'm doing my things, but you're dealing with a battle at home and you're not sharing that with your team, then of course you're not battling it together because you're not letting them in. So there's a level of kind of authenticity that you need to bring to the table, openness that you need to bring to the table so those guys can battle with you. There's many ways that you guys could do this. I remember years ago, it was kind of interesting. I don't know what book it was, but probably Goggins' first book. And we were covering it in the Iron Council. And for whatever reason, everyone's riled up. You know how Goggins gets everyone all kind of like, we all want to run. And it was a Saturday.
I never felt that way.
But it was Tony Urzi. And Tony's like, in the spirit of this month, I'm going for distance this Saturday. And I'm like, you know what? I'll join you. And another guy's like, oh, I'll join you. And before you know it, our entire battle team in different locations geographically dispersed across the U.S., we're all running on treadmills or outside, seeing how far we're going to go. We didn't say we're going to run 5. We just said we're going to run distance. Before you know it, I ended up running 16 miles, right? And then someone else is like, dude, I'm going for 20, right? We battled. So there's ways. You just might have to get a little creative as well.
Yeah. I like that story. I had a funny story at the gym this morning. Me and my training partner were working out together, and we were doing incline dumbbell bench press, and I was doing the weights, and he jumped on the weights, and he did it, and it went really fast. He's like, oh, I need to go up. And he went to the weight rack, and the dumbbells that he was trying to go up to, they weren't there. And he spent, I'm not kidding, he spent like 90 seconds or 2 minutes like looking for them. Like, bro, they're not there. Somebody else is using them. Just grab the one up. Just grab the weights up. He's like, I don't know if I can do those. I'm like, well, you don't have a choice. Grab the ones up. So he grabbed them and he did them. And he got done. He got his reps in, and everything looked fine. Form was great. He got his reps in. And I told him, I said, all right, that tells me 2 things. And he's like, what? I'm like, first, you've been lying this whole time to yourself. Like, you could do more than you have been. And second, that's your new normal. And he's like, shit. But this is why you have men in your corner. And he does the same. He would do the same for me. He would push me the same way. This is the power of having men hold you to task. Like, I didn't do it as a jerk. He didn't take it that way. We were lighthearted and having fun about it, but we pushed each other. And if you do that enough with other men, you can't help but build and forge those deep bonds.
Yeah, that's great. All right, Jeremy Kofi, what is the most common leadership weakness you see in men today, and how they can overcome it?
I would give 2. Because there's 2 ends of the spectrum, I think, on this. I actually really want to hear what you have to say, so I'm not going to be long-winded on this. The first one for me is the lack of responsibility men are willing to take on, because leadership requires responsibility. And so there's a whole cohort of men who will shirk leadership because they don't want the burden of the responsibility. And that, to me, is unfortunate. So that's one.
Yeah.
And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, there's the egomaniac who wants all the accolades, all the praise, all the notoriety, do everything himself, be acknowledged, be recognized, be appreciated, and isn't willing to bring other people in, vacate roles to allow other people to fill in and step up, look for new ways to do things because he has it all figured out. So the two leadership problems I see are opposite ends of the same spectrum. No responsibility and wanting all of the praise, notoriety, and accolades that come with being in a leadership position.
Yeah, and that ladder is just going to operate in the space of what I just say, unrighteous dominion, right? They're going to be positions of authority, and they're going to be miserable.
It's miserable themselves and miserable to work with.
Miserable to work with. They're just going to ruin relationships. I'm going to grab a post. I'm reading this from a post that I made, I don't know, back in November. If a leader can't recognize their flaws, they have the most dangerous flaw of them all, a lack of self-awareness. And I think that is the most critical issue, primarily just because then there's no growth. There's no self-evaluation. There's no growth. There's no humility. So everything's going to be what? Someone else's problem. They're going to persecute. They're going to go command and control. It makes for the worst leaders, in my opinion, if they're not self-aware.
Simple as that.
Yeah.
Did he ask a second part of what to do about it?
Yeah. How do they overcome it?
Yeah. So I'll give my answer for both. The guy who doesn't take on responsibility, I can't tell somebody to take on responsibility. Some people are just never going to take it on. It's the guy who wants to, but is afraid. That's the guy who can.
Yeah.
And this is my mantra. And I don't really vocalize this, but I promise you this thought goes through my head. I am a man, and this is my responsibility. That's what goes through my head. When I don't want to do something, or there's nobody stepping up, or things aren't getting done, I'm a man. It is my responsibility to do this. That's all I need. That is literally all that I need. Because it doesn't say anything about whether I'm afraid or concerned or scared. Of course I am. But that has nothing to do with whether or not I should do it.
Yeah.
The mantra that I've adopted on the other side of the spectrum, because I tend to be egotistical. I like to hear myself talk, obviously. I think I have really good answers to all the problems that ever existed throughout humankind. But I've adopted this, and it's been helpful, not only for other people, it's been really helpful for me, it's my job to build leaders. It is not my job to perpetually lead others.
Yeah. So
with my kids, if I have to lead them into their adulthood, I've failed as a leader.
Yeah.
If at work, in the Iron Council, for example, if I have to lead every battle team because there's nobody else who could lead effectively, I let all of you guys down. My job is to create opportunities that other people can build themselves into. That's, to me, what it means to be a leader. And that's why we have 55 or whatever it is, battle teams and battle team leader mentors. And I do relatively little because we have so many qualified, capable men. And at the risk of sounding arrogant, that only happens if I get my ass out of the way and let people get into those spots and those positions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you've done an amazing job from that perspective. You know, when I think about overcoming self-awareness, I think at the root of it is ego. And there's something that I would like to call out, and I'll explain this briefly. I mentioned this earlier. There's red flags of when we're in a victim mindset, right? They're often in this space of I'm waiting and hoping, I'm allocating blame, I'm making excuses, and I'm not receiving input or feedback. That's what a victim does. And they don't receive input, by the way, is because the problem's not with them, right? It's always somewhere else, right? So there's zero responsibility for that person. Often we don't think of people in a victim mindset when they're in a position of authority. And the label I would give those people are persecutors. And they persecute why? Once again, because they're a victim of what? their subordinates, their employees. Oh, the problem's over there. It's not with me. And so they will blame. They will make excuses. They won't get feedback. And they'll look for opportunities to persecute others to justify their lack of inaction. Both scenarios, victim mindset. A persecutor is really just a victim in a position of authority. And at the root of it, it is your inability to self-reflect and check your ego and realize that you don't have it figured out. And this is why you'll get leaders that won't delegate. Why? Because they're stroking their own ego, right? It's really hard for, like, it goes against the natural human nature. If we look at your scenario, Ryan, running the Iron Council, where you have these battle teams and you relinquish and delegate a lot of authority to them to operate how they will. That means that you're not saying, well, my way's the best way. You're saying, I don't know. You figure out your way. And we're here to support you. That requires an ego check for a team to operate how a team might operate without your direct influence on it all the time. That is checking your ego. So I think that the biggest element and why people get victim, and I was thinking about this over on Sunday, I was nerding out in my mind, at least, around pride, because we've talked about the pride cycle and how that works. And often we associate pride with success, right? I've made it, so I become prideful. But there's an prideful. But there's an element of people that don't have the success, but there's still an element of pride in them, that they deserve something without the effort, that they're entitled to something. And they can experience that same cycle, all without success. And they're in this space of victimhood where they think they deserve something, they're entitled to something, and they're at the mercy of these other individuals that are pushing them down. It generates the same concept as someone that has a lot of pride.
That is interesting, because as you were thinking that, I was wondering about how that would apply in my own life. And I was kind of drawn back to my high school sports days where, if I didn't show up fully, I remember I had a coach come up to me one time and say, you think you're so good that you don't get to be here at practice and go 100%? You think you're that good of a player right now that you can just insult everybody else here? I was like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
But when you think about it, you may not vocalize that because you're like, wait, no, I don't. But you're operating as if you are.
Yeah.
You think you're so special that you get to have whatever you want to have without the effort? You think you're that great? You're not. You're just not.
Yeah. Which is really just
we've been talking
ego.
A little bit. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. We've been talking a little bit about irony, and the ironic thing about this idea of leadership and not being overly egotistical. And you said prideful and proud. I think those are two different things. And I think that's why you were having a hard time saying it. It's okay to be proud because that means you're happy with your accomplishments, and it's okay to be proud.
And probably grateful for it, right? There's an element of gratitude in being proud. Yeah.
Right. Prideful, on the other hand, think about the word prideful. You're full of pride that there's absolutely no room for anything else. And that's the distinction. Prideful and proud. I can be proud of my kids, but if I'm prideful about my role as their father, that might be an issue.
Yeah.
Right. So
good distinction.
I forgot where I was going with that. So let's move on to the next question.
All right. Woody
I was
Lord.
going to say something very, very important.
Profound.
Very important.
Yeah.
But forgot what it was.
We'll save it for next week.
Fair.
Okay. Woody Lord, I'd like to get both your thoughts on saving for your future and spending to enjoy the moment. My wife and I have pretty aggressive savings goals and find ourselves naturally ebbing and flowing between the tight word and splurge lifestyles. What can guys do to help find a middle ground?
Well, I would start with the end in mind, as Stephen Covey might say. So what is the ultimate objective? If the ultimate objective is that you want to buy an island somewhere and or build this, $1 billion business, then in order to have those things, you're going to need to sacrifice some family vacations. That's just the reality of it. If you take Elon Musk, for example, I can't imagine he's the most pleasurable person to spend any amount of time with on a personal level.
Yeah.
But that's the trade-off. And most of the guests that I've had on, the high achieving ones anyways, in their own right, are the ones who have sacrificed other aspects of their life for their given pursuit. It's just the nature of it. But that's hard because your professional success or your financial prosperity isn't the only consideration, which is why you're wrestling with the question. You might have time that you want to spend with your wife and experiences you want to provide to your kids. And so I would suggest that you start with the end in mind and ask yourself, what is the ultimate goal of life? Is it to build that empire that's untouchable? Or is it to have enough residual income to provide me $200,000 a year and allow me to go on the trips and the vacations I want to go on and not be strapped and burdened with debt? And if that's the goal, then the process is different than building that billion-dollar empire we talked about. Yeah. And so it might actually, the funny thing about this is people will say that they want to have a good retirement so they can go do and enjoy the things that they want to enjoy, blah, 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 blah. And then you start looking into their finances, and I only know this because I'm a previous financial advisor, is you start looking in their finances and you're like, you can do that now. You can do that, let's say 3 weeks out of the year. You can actually do that right now and still build up towards the future. It's like that adage of the Mexican fisherman where he's down and he's fishing in the bay and the Gulf of America, as we would call it now. He's fishing in the Gulf of America, and he's catching this fish, and this businessman comes down for a vacation and sees this fisherman, and this fisherman goes and he sells his fish to the market every day, and then he goes down and he fishes, and the businessman sees an idea, and he's like, hey, you know what? Like, if you do this, but then you build your own place, you could eventually start a business, and then you can hire people to do it. And then you can sell to all these people, and then you can eventually franchise it, and you can have multiple locations, and you can spend all your time talking with people and giving them your fish. And the Mexican fisherman says, okay, and then what? And he says, and then one day you can retire and you could spend all your time, as much time as you want, on the beach doing something you love, fishing. And the Mexican fisherman says, that sounds great. That's what I do right now. And so our drive for financial success sometimes blinds us to the reality that we can have it right now. We can do those things right now. That's why I do go on hunts and I do go on trips with my kids and I do explore those things because I have my own goals and investments and different things I'm doing, but I also realize the ultimate goal is something that I can partially enjoy right now.
Totally. And you might just have to change what it looks like. Asia and I we did some inventory. She had this question that we were addressing over dinner on Saturday night. She says, what are the most memorable times in our relationship? And nothing against our kids that might eventually listen to this one day. It didn't include them. It was when her and I went on vacation together, just her and I. And those were the moments that we remember over the last, 17 years of our marriage. And so we're like, yeah, we need to get back to doing those. But that's also a false dichotomy that it requires an airplane and it requires a beach. Her and I could hop on a car today and drive down to Four Corners or areas of Colorado and have our own couples trip from a more financial, cheaper perspective. We could do that today. Right. And so it may not just be exactly what you think it should look like. Right. We always have this conversation with people in the gym. It's like, oh, my schedule's tough. Yeah, well, your workout might be push-ups, at your lunch break. Right. Can it be done? Absolutely. You may have to pivot a little bit and look at it differently, too.
Yeah. Right. There's one other quote I was going to say that I think if you incorporate it into your life, it might help. It's this: that's not important to me. Most people don't know what is and what is not important to them. And so you can look at a person's, as they say, their calendar and their bank account and really actually determine what their priorities are.
Yeah.
But if you're going down the road and you think, oh, I'm going to stop and, go to the fast food place and get a burger, I think you ought to consider, is this important to you? Is that hamburger that you're going to spend now, it seems like $20 if you want to get anything, is that more important than saving for retirement? If it is, fine, that's fine. Make your decisions, but make it with the information at hand. Yeah. But if it's not, then don't do it. If somebody invites you on a thing and you are just begrudgingly going and you catch yourself bitching and moaning about like, I don't want to do, don't do it. Yeah. You don't have to. If you already committed, that's one thing, but don't commit again. And the next time somebody says, hey, can you come do this thing? Or actually look at your calendar, look at your goals and your objectives and say, well, that's not important to me. No, I'm not going to make it to that thing, and then live with it. And I think that's also how you get rid of the fear of missing out. You know, the FOMO, everybody has that. They jump online and they see all these people doing all these amazing things. And I think that's the goal of what social media influencers try to do anyways, is just get everybody jealous, which is a horrible thing, but it's the reality. The way you get over FOMO is you make a grown decision like a man. You decided not to go to that thing. Why? Well, because you're saving money. Cool. Because we wanted to pay off the car. Good choice. Because we're going on vacation next month. Sounds reasonable. You consciously made the decision not to go to that thing for a reason, and that's good. Live with it.
Totally.
Or make different choices next time.
More in this line of thinking, your Friday field notes from a couple weeks ago, right? Around doesn't make the boat go any faster is perfect.
Off of what you shared with me.
Yeah. It's that same concept. I love it. All right, last question. You good for one more?
Okay.
Yes, all right, sir. Elijah Elliott. I've been at my current job for almost 10 years. It feels as if there's no growth and no room for it here. I'm definitely not happy here, and I do not get any sense of meaning from the work I do. However, I feel trapped due to the high demands on me from both company and family. What suggestions would you have for someone like me who is wanting to pursue more meaningful career path?
Well, I know where this conversation is going to go because we've had this a lot, and we'll probably get to it. So I'm trying to give you a different perspective. One thing I want you to consider is that you say you feel the high pressure from work. I'm hesitant to say this, but I think it's the truth. Your company would gladly dump your ass in a heartbeat if they had to. It's very unlikely they have any sort of loyalty to the degree that you have loyalty to them. And that might be different if it's a family business or if you've known the people for 20 years. I can allow for that. I can make room for that conversation.
But the probability is very high that you are accurate.
Right. So loyalty should only go as far as the other party is willing to be loyal to you. And if that company doesn't care about you, there's no reason that you need to care. And even if they do, if that bit, I've talked with friends just in the past couple of days who have had to let people go over the past, 10, 20 years. It's not even personal. They don't want to. And they still make that choice because they're obligated to. It's a business decision.
Best interest of the company. Yeah.
All right. So don't for a second bust your ass just to think that if you do, you get to escape the hand of fate that might come in and say you're fired. It just doesn't work like that. As far as your family, I don't think your wife wants you to be miserable. It's kind of what you made it sound like. Well, I just feel so much pressure from my family. What you're saying is your wife wants you to do that and be miserable. That's what you're saying. She doesn't want that. I bet if you went and asked her and said, hey, babe, I've been miserable. And she would say, yeah, I know. I know you have. And you know what? It's the work that's making me miserable, but I found this job that pays me 80% of what I'm making, but I think we'll be really happy there. I bet she would say, okay, let's find a way to make. I'm not saying do it. It's just a little thought experiment. I bet she'd say, okay, yeah, we can live with that. We can make that work. So what your wife wants is for you to provide naturally, and she also wants you to be happy. Again, false dichotomy there a little bit.
Yeah.
But as far as the work, I'm not going to steal where I think you might go with this at all. But we talked about it earlier, 100% first. And what I would suggest in the meantime is build other things over here. You can go 100% when you're in your business. And if you would have done this Elijah 10 years ago, you might not be in the position you are now. And I only say that because I don't want you to sit on what I'm about to share with you for another 10 years, because in 10 years, I don't want to hear the same question from you. I want to hear a different question, a better question based on better circumstances for you. But what I would spend a lot of time doing is learning applicable skills in your current career that are applicable elsewhere, because you're learning on somebody else's dime. And you're not taking advantage of them, by the way. That's the agreement. They're going to teach you these skills, but nowhere does it say you can't apply them to other aspects of your life.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's one thing. I'd really get good at networking. I cannot overemphasize the importance of professional networking for men. You think you're safe. You don't think you need to make connections. I'm not saying this about you personally. I just know a lot of men think, oh, I'm good. I'm not in sales. I don't need. Wrong. You need to know everybody in the office. You need to have a close relationship with all of the movers and shakers in the office. You need to go to networking clients. Yep. Yeah. You need to go to networking functions. Even if your company won't pay you to go, you should go to Chamber. You should go to Rotary. You should go to Business Network International, even if the company's not paying you. And you can represent the company, you can represent your own thing, whatever, but you need to be around other people, because those are the people who are going to present other opportunities, but they're only going to present them if you're willing to go 100% with your current business. They'll see that. They will. And they know who you are. So you have to be around other people. So I would develop skills and develop my network. That's what I would work on.
Perfect. Now, here's the thought, and you've already covered it, but Elijah, the opportunity and growth that is available to you today is typically shrouded in the work that you're avoiding. So evaluate the position. What are you avoiding? Where's the hard opportunities for you to learn and grow and create opportunity? And then it goes back to the questions that we had kind of addressed earlier today around the same subject. So
I had I'll give you a little bit of just a quick backstory here. When I was in financial planning, I went to my boss and I said, hey, I want to do this marketing thing and I want to start marketing a little bit more, and I want to do this audio CD thing that I've told a lot of people about, where I put my first presentation on a CD and I give it to people. And he said, no, you can't. No, we don't do that. We don't do it like that. I said, why don't you do it like that? He's like, well, I mean, you have to go through compliance and have to this and that. I'm like, okay. I mean, it's a script. I can send it through compliance and they can say this, don't say that, tweak this, add this, take that. I can do that. No, we don't do that. I'm like, oh, well, okay. So I went and started my own company. That's not the only reason, by the way.
Yeah.
But I started my own registered investment advisory firm. And guess what I did? Did the thing I wanted to do anyways, because he said I couldn't do it. Yeah. And immediately the business started to grow. Very long story short, that decision where there was some opportunity there that I was willing to jump into and they weren't willing to do it, and I did it anyways and took the risk to do it anyways, springboarded me into what we're doing here with Order of Man. I never would have had a podcast because they told me you can't podcast in this business. You can't do that CD presentation. You can't do this. You can't do that. You can't market this way. You can't go on radio. Can't. And I didn't buy any of it. There were rules that I abided by. I understand the regulations, especially in finances, and I abided by those rules, but I did it anyways. And that's the exact reason why I have a podcast today and why it's doing so well 10 years later, because I never listened to what people said I could and couldn't do and looked for opportunities where none existed before. Nobody ever thought of that before.
Well, and to dissect that a little bit, Ryan, most guys don't even have the conversation with the boss, right? Like they'll go, oh yeah, that they'll listen to that story and then say they'll jump to the action, but they'll skip the part where you assertively communicated up the chain of command and said, I have an idea. This is the idea. Here's the benefits. Some bosses may have heard you and went, dude, Ryan, awesome. Let's create this position, or True. Let's have you train the rest of the organization. But we don't even have those conversations. I remember the first time I was a software engineer for a couple of years, and I got my degree, and I used that as like a pin, right? I got my bachelor's, And I schedule a meeting with my boss. It's been my boss for probably about a year at the time. And I grabbed my resume and I printed it out. And I had a list of all my accomplishments for the organization over the past year and a half. And I went to his office and I slid it across his desk and I said, I want to apply for a position that doesn't exist yet. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, we need to build a software development team. I'm the right person to lead that team. Let me explain. Let me share with you what I've been doing for the last year and a half. And he was like, and literally, sounds great. And
awesome.
I remember walking out of the office going, shit, I did not think that was going to work at all.
You're like, I should have asked for more money.
Totally. But the point is now that we've been in leadership roles later in our careers, how often are you inspired when someone comes to you, Ryan, and says, Ryan, I have an idea. This is why I'm the man for the job. Let me show you. Do you think low of that person? No. You go,
even if I don't like the idea.
I know you think more highly of that individual. They're like, they're assertive. They want it. This is important to them. They're even more committed to this company and this organization than I realized. You have to be assertive in that communication up the chain. And in most cases, it will benefit you, whether it was a good idea or not, in most cases.
I think there's the other angle, the other side of this is if you're listening to this and you are in that position of authority and power, that you hear what we're saying and you acknowledge it when people have ideas, even if they're dumb. I think it's really, especially when we get busy, I've had people present ideas and I've really been cognizant of the way that I respond and what my response is training people to do. So, for example, if my kids come to me and they share, I don't know, some dumb story about something I don't want to hear about, and I like roll my eyes and I'm like, hurry and get to the point, and I act agitated or impatient, which all might be true. If I act that way, the result is that they don't come share things with me. That's the inevitable result.
Yeah.
So if an employee comes to you and says, hey, boss, I got this great idea, even if it's a bad idea and you're like, I don't have time for that bullshit right now. Like, can you just go do your work and like, we'll talk about it later. What you're asking them to do is to never come to you with an idea again. And then I've heard people that have the balls, the audacity to say, my employees don't ever take initiative. They don't ever come up with ideas. They don't care about what the company's doing. I'm like, what about Joe, who just sent that idea over to you last week? Oh, well, that was stupid. Okay, maybe, but he did the thing that you're complaining people aren't doing. And it's you who told him not to do it because of your attitude about it. Yeah. So, yeah, I think we need to be more aware of what our response is training people to do. It's either a incentive or a deterrent. As they would say in, the political warfare landscape. You're either incentivizing people to behave a certain way or you're deterring them from behaving a certain way. And as men and leaders, whether it's at the family level or the corporate level, we ought to be aware of what our responses are incentivizing our people to do.
Totally. Cool. We got through all our questions.
Good work. We got some over on Facebook, so we'll address those next week. Those are always really good questions. I have just been excited about the level of questions that we've been getting lately. I don't know what's changed or if guys are just been around long enough where they don't want to be, speaking of incentives, mocked for asking us dumb questions. But the questions that we get are good. I love the questions we get. And we've got some new ones lately, too.
Yeah, maybe we're reading them different, too.
Maybe we're like, I don't want to answer it that way.
Yeah.
Oh, you did skip over a question though, by the way, from Robbie.
Totally. Well,
Robbie. No, we're gonna hit it once and for all. You have 2 minutes,
okay.
Kip?
Sure. Let's do it.
So, do you have 2 minutes?
I do.
Okay. Ask the question. Let's tackle this once and for all. I thought about this.
So, and let me pull it back. I closed the document, so give me a second to pull it up. So Robbie asked a question.
Some background here while you're doing that. He asked a question a couple weeks ago, essentially about masculine hobbies versus things that we would not consider masculine hobbies. And we answered it in a way that he did not like twice. apparently. So Robbie asked it again, but I have some thoughts based on the way he framed it this time. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, in full disclosure, I was like, Ryan, you just need to reply to Robbie personally on this one. But
no, I've got an answer.
Okay. Should we intentionally look for projects that will reinforce or ground us in our masculinity, like building a boat, rebuilding an engine, etc.? I feel like suburban life is making us weaker, not just physically, but mentally as well, because we are not grounded in masculinity like we used to 50 years ago when men used to change their own oil in their car. Should we make it a point to take on more masculine projects for purpose of reinforcing masculinity? Is there value in that, or should we just accept the new standard of suburban masculinity? There you go.
The answer is yes. The answer is, of course, yes. Anytime that you pick up a hobby, it's to address a deficiency, right? Maybe you're not as good at a thing. Maybe you would like to do a certain thing. And I do think that we answered this, whether it was a week or two ago, that if I remember correctly, and I might just be making this up, Robbie said, if we have all of those other things taken care of, is it okay to... I think I vaguely remember... Do you remember that, or am I making that up?
Yes, I remember that as well.
Okay, so he did say, if you have these other bases covered, is it okay to... And the answer to that is yes. But look, if you don't know how to fight, then you probably shouldn't be worrying about painting a masterpiece. Like, fighting is probably more important in the life of a man than painting, to be honest. If you're 50 pounds overweight, you should probably focus on that before you, I don't like, go take pictures on a Sunday afternoon river walk or something. I don't know. Like, if you don't have a blue belt in jiu-jitsu, then you should probably get at least a blue belt in jiu-jitsu. Like, that's probably a thing you should do. If you can't, at a minimum, bench 1 times your body weight, squat 1.25 times your body weight, deadlift 1.5 times your body weight, you should probably get that figured out. Yeah. If you don't know how to shoot a firearm, you should probably figure it out. If you don't know how to fix the toilet, yes, you should know how to fix the toilet. If you don't know how to change the oil in your car, you should know how to change the oil or change a tire. Yes, all of those things you should know how to do. If you don't know how to build things, if you don't have a general sense of knowledge around hand and power tools, yes, you should know how to do those things. Absolutely. And you should also do the other things too. But those should be a priority. Of course.
And I think this is what we kind of answered, and maybe this is where we lost you a little bit, Robbie, on this, was protect, provide, and preside. Are you efficient and you covered in those 3 areas? If you're not, those are deficiencies that you need to address. And those are typically masculine things. And then if you want to hop into the arts, who are we to say that you shouldn't, right? Like, and not only shouldn't, it'd be great. I would love to see more masculinity in the arts. I absolutely would love it, because I hate the fact that if a boy wants to dance, he thinks that he has to do it in a feminine way. It drives me mad. I hate those things.
Well, I think that's the general consensus, because there are so many gay men who are dancers. But there's also straight men, and you see them, and they're powerful, and you see them dancing, and like men, and it's awesome. They're pretty athletic, actually.
Yeah. So, and there's greatness in that, in the masculinity in the arts, because this is how we promote positive masculinity. This is how we show that masculinity is a great thing. So all of it's good. Learn all of it. But what we're really saying is, in those areas of your realms of responsibility as a man, protecting, providing, presiding, do you have deficiencies there? If you do, you should probably shore those up.
And I think, to his point about the urban environments, that's probably more relevant. If you've lived in an urban city your entire life, do you know how to camp?
Yeah. You have to go out of your way. Yeah.
Right. If you don't know how to do those things, put down the pottery for a minute, not forever, just for a minute, and go camp, or tell a friend to go take you hunting and round it out. That's all I'm saying. Just round it out. Of course, men should do that.
Yeah. Cool.
Yep. All right.
One more question
Hopefully we addressed
from
it
Robbie
to
next
Robbie's
week.
liking. Robbie, hopefully that's to your liking now, okay? Just giving you a hard time, man.
So, I mean, big things, obviously connect with Ryan on X and Instagram at Ryan Michler. And then really the event coming up in May 1st through the 4th.
1st through the 4th, yep.
And that's themensforge.com.
I'm excited, man. We had
Cool.
a lot of people sign up just recently, so it's going to be a very cool event. Robert Glover, Dr. Robert Glover, No More Mr. Nice Guy is going to be there.
Such a stud.
I'm going to be there. It's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's a joke. That second part's a joke, okay?
No, I mean, it's
all right,
not
guys.
really, but.
I mean, I will be there, but that's not the draw. All right, guys. Great questions today. Appreciate that. Hopefully, like we do every week, hopefully we gave you some things to ponder and think about. And we will be back on Friday. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.